Okay, so we're going to be looking at using the eraser tools, and also we're going to be talking about destructive versus non-destructive editing. So this little composition called Sky Comp is basically a collection of layers. You'll find it in your module asset pack. And let me just go from the bottom here. So the bottom layer is just a landscape, which is the original image, and I'm just going to rename that layer to landscape so it makes more sense. Then we have a layer above, which was actually an image that was brought in using file place embedded, and so when you do that, your image comes in as a smart object indicated by this little icon here. So smart object is basically like an image within Photoshop that Photoshop uses as a reference when it does transformations, so that there's no degradation. So you will learn about smart objects when we get into another learning unit. Then this little Vulture picture, which was also brought in using place embedded, and then I just created this text using the type tool. You're going to learn how to do text also in a later activity. So we're going to look at erasing first. So I'm going to hide these three layers, go to the landscape layer, and you will see that if I open the original landscape image, let me just do that just to show you, you will see that an image comes in automatically. If it's a JPEG or a sort of an image off a camera, it comes in as just a background and it's locked. And if I use my eraser tool and I erase, I actually erase back to the background color. So I'm just going to undo that and just reset this tool. So right click, reset tool, and I'm going to make the brush a little bit bigger. So you'll see when I erase, erase to the background color. So I'm just going to undo that, and then I'm going to unlock the layer. And now when I erase, you'll see that I erase to transparent. In other words, the checkers pattern represents nothing, so there's no pixels there, so we're erasing to transparent. So that's why in this composition that background layer has been unlocked, the landscape layer, so that we can erase to transparent. So if I wanted to get rid of this sky with the eraser tool, that would be a lot of work. I would need to go in and I would need to actually make my brush really tiny, and I'd need to go in and erase. It would be really an exercise in madness. So you're not going to do that. However, there are other eraser tools that are going to work better for you. So if I go to the background eraser tool, this is quite similar to the color replacement tool that you learned earlier on. So if I put it on continuously sample and discontiguous, and I'll set the tolerance to 50 and put the brush size up, providing the center point of that brush is over the blue, when I brush, it's going to delete only the blue. The moment that center point goes over another color, it starts to delete that color. Okay, so this does a much better job, and I can get a pretty good result. It's not perfect. I can see here there's a lot of cleaning up to do. So I'm just going to undo that. And then the final eraser tool is the magic eraser tool, and this one really is quite magic because it does the job for you all in one go. So the tolerance here, I've been testing it, and the tolerance I found that works is 80, and then I'm going to put contiguous off so that it jumps into these little tiny areas here and takes out the blue there as well. And then all you do is you just click and it will remove that background. Now this is destructive editing. In other words, I can't get those pixels back. Obviously I can undo, but if I saved this document and came back to it tomorrow, I can't undo. So I've actually lost those pixels. So this is not a very smart way to work. And 9 times out of 10, you should work non-destructively and not destructively. So let's redo this background, but let's do it the proper way this time. So I'm going to undo. Always go back to your move tool, and I'm going to go to select color range. Make sure sampled colors is the option and click on the sky. Set your fuzziness up to mine is set to 170 and OK. And then just to check our selection, I'm going to go to select, select and mask. So I can see there's some grays here, so I need to fix that. So I'm going to bring the contrast up just to harden that black area and say OK. So now I've got a really good selection of the sky, but it's actually not the sky that I want to keep. It's the landscape. So I'm going to invert my selection, select, inverse, or Shift, Command, or Control I. And then instead of deleting, I'm going to go down here and say add a mask or add layer mask. And so I've hidden those pixels with this layer mask. So if I hold down Alt and click, I can see that layer mask. That is a non-destructive way of working. In other words, at any stage, I can disable that layer mask. I can edit the layer mask, and I can get those pixels back. That's a much smarter way of working. So I'm going to take the sky and clouds layer, show it, and I'm going to move that layer behind the landscape layer. With my move tool and holding shift, I'm just going to move that up so I can see the clouds nicely. Alright, so now it's coming together. So let's have a look at the vulture. So in this case, this also was an image that was placed using place embedded. Now if I wanted to erase pixels here, you'll see that it gives me a little cross there, a little no you can't. And the reason why is because it's a smart object, and you cannot erase pixels on a smart object. You need to rasterize that layer first. So if I was to do it in the non-destructive way, I wouldn't need to do that. So I'm going to just take my object selection tool, and I'm going to make a selection of that vulture, and I'm going to click on layer mask. So that's done a pretty good job. But the problem here, if I just move it up here so you can see it better, is when I press Command or Control T to transform it, can you see the transform box actually reads the original size of the image and not the masked area, which actually can be quite a pain sometimes, because if you've got a large image and you've got a small area that's showing and the rest is masked, you're going to have this large bounding box or transform box, which I don't like. So I'm going to escape out of here and undo back to here, and instead of using a layer mask, I'm actually going to erase. So I'm going to rasterize this layer first. So right click, rasterize layer, so it's no longer a smart object. And then I'm going to go to select and mask, and let's just change our view to on layers. And I can see if I zoom in a bit here that there's still some blue going on here. So I'm going to take my refine edge tool and I'm just going to paint in there just to fix some of that. Just make my brush a bit bigger. Let's do that there. Okay, also a little bit here and a little bit there. Whoa, that was just a bolt of lightning out the blue. There's a thunderstorm going on here. And I'm going to press OK. And then what I'm going to do is invert my selection. So select, inverse, and delete. So that was, I'm just unplugging my laptop. So that was a destructive process. So I am going to deselect, Command or Control D, and now if I press Command or Control T, you can see that my transform box is now exactly the size of the vulture, which is really what I want. So I'm going to pop the vulture up here, hit enter, hold down Alt, make a copy, Command or Control T, and let's make a smaller version. And just so that it's not obvious that we've used the same vulture twice, I'm going to change the copy a little bit by going to Edit, Transform, Distort, and I'm going, Edit, Transform, Warp. That's what I wanted. And let's just zoom in a bit here. And I'm just going to change it a little bit. So I'm going to warp the pixels here just a tiny bit, not too radically, just so that it reads as a slightly different bird. Okay, I probably went a bit far there, but that's fine. Alright, and I'm just going to call this one Vulture 1 and Vulture 2. And so this is a scenario where actually deleting pixels works a little bit better. I mean, I would not discourage you from working non-destructively, but if it's convenient for you to delete pixels instead of masking them, this would be a scenario where that would be acceptable. Alright, so let's finish this composition. So I'm going to take this text, which just says sky, and it's text that's been rasterized into pixels, so it's no longer editable text. I'm going to change a few things here. I'm just going to go to my FX and choose stroke, and just put a white stroke on the outside. I'm then going to change my blending mode to overlay, and I'm going to bring the fill opacity down. So the fill is the original pixels, not the effect. So you see the stroke doesn't get affected, the original pixels do. Okay, so I'm going to bring that down a little bit, and I want the bigger vulture to be on top, so it's in front, and the smaller vulture to sort of be behind the text like that. And then I'm going to take this layer which has an effect applied to it, and I want to rasterize it so that it's just pixels again. So I'm going to right click and say rasterize layer style, and again I'm just going to adjust the blending mode. It's lost its blending mode. Okay, and also because I've rasterized the effect, the stroke is also being blended. So let's try screen. Maybe that's a better blending mode. Nope, I prefer overlay. Alright, so now here is another scenario where using the eraser tool might be a better option. Is I want the sky, the word sky, to kind of disappear into the grass, and I need to erase some of the bottom pixels. Now I could absolutely do that with a layer mask by adding a layer mask and painting black on the layer mask. But if I just want to do it quickly without going to that much trouble, I just take my eraser tool and make sure I'm on a soft brush. So set my hardness down to 0 and set my opacity down a bit so that it's not as strong, and then a nice big brush, and I'm just going to erase the bottom here so that the word sky looks like it's kind of going back into the grass. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and see you next time.